Hi there, Kelly. So starting with the first set of standards, I think that one standard that I have worked pretty hard to meet, it hasn't come as easily to me as some of the specifically tech-related ones, is standard F. The online teacher is cognizant of the diversity of student academic needs and incorporates accommodations into the online environment. Now, even upon the start, like at the very start of the program, I was pretty comfortable with a lot of different technologies. So a lot of the earlier standards about like knowing how to troubleshoot and like focusing on emerging technologies and even future technologies, that's always come pretty easy to me. But even beginning in ED 602, I think the one project that still stands out to me is the TRI project, and specifically the work that I did with the UDL cast book creator, where I took a section of Macbeth and I created an activity, or really a set of activities, that was going to address multiple learning styles, accommodations, and create multiple paths to address these learning styles and abilities that students have. That was a real eye-opener for me, and I realized how much more of that I could be doing. Now that we've just been sort of introduced to some of these newer models, I mentioned in the collaborative notes that ARCS was new to me, this idea of kind of, building and creating motivation with students. But the R2D2 model, I think, is another great way to really evoke this, wonderful diversity of student needs and really meeting those needs. I don't think, looking at the scale, that I necessarily would get a perfect score for all of these. I think that's the beauty of these standards. Within all of these standards, I think there are areas where we really excel and areas where we could still improve. But overall, I feel really happy with standard F. I might not know everything there is to know about IEPs and the ins and outs of that. And to be completely honest, even as an English teacher, sometimes when you get a student at the high school level who struggles with literacy issues, it is difficult to know where to start with that student, to know exactly how I can help him get more kind of at least closer to his level. That's not the easiest thing in the world to do. A lot of times high school teachers, I think, expect elementary and middle school teachers to handle the heavy lifting there and teach students how to become comfortable with literacy. And then we teach them content, and we teach them, vocabulary and all these specific literary terms and stuff. But sometimes we have to go back to square one. So even within standard F, I know I'm not perfect, but I do feel that I would pass this standard because I really do care quite a bit about, addressing all of my diverse learners' needs. And actually, at this point, it's kind of fun to say, what other ways can I introduce this, subject or this content or this topic to students? Let's try a Flipgrid with this. See if the video interaction makes things more accessible to students who don't read or write as well. Let's give them something more, that oral that they can speak. This student has an interest in making a video. Let's try that instead of having him necessarily write a complete essay. So I think that's one area that I do kind of, I'm happy with where I am. No, I still need work, but I'm happy with where I am and know where I could still improve. Now, the standard where I see a much greater need for improvement on my part is standard I. A lot of times, and I know this is a personal failing of mine, a lot of times I focus so much on the creation of lessons, of essential questions, of activities that do meet all these diverse learners' needs. Sometimes the taking the time to look necessarily at all these assessments as data seems to me rather cold, and it does turn me off a little bit. But at the same time, I know how important it is. I know that giving students a variety of options in order to assess themselves and for me to assess them, they're all necessary, but they're nothing if I don't go back and actually spend the time to analyze that data. I know that, tools like quizzes and Kahoot, they've been great in giving me instant feedback in the form of spreadsheets as to what questions a number of students missed with specific content. But taking the time to not only create diverse activities, but then find a way that works for me to assess those assessments and know what is working for students, what is not, and how I can better create activities for them in the future. That to me is the one area where I could improve the most. I think I've come to that realization a few times in this course, where the way I look at a term, something like data, I look much more at these sort of student-centered approaches, and I want everything to be in that social presence of the community of inquiry, and it can't be like that. I have to do a lot more of this grunt work that I do some of, but I don't think I do enough of. So looking at some of the knowledge and understanding goals on Standard I, knowing and understanding the importance of self-reflection, I'm all about that. I think that is a much more sort of personal aspect that actually is sort of a little kind of anti-data, but at the same time using that fueling data, I think is how I need to look at that. Same thing for creating opportunities for my student self-reflection. I think I'm decent with that. But looking at addressing levels of ability through a variety of alternative interventions, that's something that even the way that's worded, I think I would have to reflect more on and say, do I do that? Do I do that enough? This was really interesting to read through all of these standards. As I said, kind of grading myself as I went through all of them was really interesting to see that for most of them I felt very comfortable, that I was at least at a place where I was satisfactory at worst. But Standard I has given me a bit of pause, and I think that I really need to spend some time doing a better job maintaining data and records, and using that to kind of be the ultimate student-centered tool and to really help my students on many different levels. So so F I feel really comfortable with. I think I could use some work on.